Hello. Our story begins on Umbara. General Skywalker and Commander Tano had just finished up their first skirmish with the local population. The Umbarans were unrelenting, and it was becoming steadily apparent to the two Jedi that this battle would be a grueling one. Similar to Geonosis 2 and Ryloth, they knew going into this that this was going to be a multifaceted campaign. One space battle, two ground operations, and who knows what else. Being that this battle would test them unlike ever before, Anakin was prepared to lead all of his men and his Padawan across the surface and capture the planet with as little losses as necessary, on both sides. It was clear the locals had been corrupted by the Separatists, and if the first skirmish was an indication of anything, it was the Umbarans that would fight until the bitter end for their home world. As the men started taking up their frontline positions, a gunship landed at a temporary command post established by Rex, Anakin, and Ahsoka. Out from the gunship came General Pong Krell. He was an infamous name within the Grand Army of the Republic. His reputation preceded him as one of the most successful generals throughout the war, but with such success also came with the greatest loss of clone life for any general. Off the bat, Skywalker hadn't even considered that. He was confused. Why did Master Krell come all the way out here? He was without his military force after all. Well, as it turns out, a message broke through the blockade, and Anakin was to be relieved of duty. Mas Amedda was directed by Palpatine to send Anakin back to Coruscant. None of the Jedi present on planet knew that Palpatine was sending Skywalker to Coruscant to avoid this battle. However, one Jedi did truly know who Palpatine was. Master Krell informed Anakin and Commander Tano that he was being assigned to lead this operation until the proper moment came. Anakin tried to stand up for Ahsoka, telling Master Krell that there was no reason to relinquish Ahsoka's command. She had won plenty of battles leading up to this point. Krell decided to use his Jedi playbook for this, informing Skywalker that as a Jedi, he could not willfully allow a child to lead this assault. It wasn't exactly what either Anakin or Ahsoka wanted to hear, but truthfully, that was pretty fair. Ahsoka was barely 16 by this point. Leading the Umbaran campaign for the 501st wasn't beyond her skills, but if General Krell was present, why not learn from a different instructor? Plus, Krell told Anakin that it was pointless to squabble. He had to return to Coruscant and the men had a battle to win. In the background, the locals were saying hello again, and another skirmish was beginning. Anakin looked to Ahsoka as he got on the gunship, telling her to listen to Master Krell. She nodded. Anakin smiled at her before turning his attention to Krell and nodding, as his gunship lifted off and fled into the atmosphere. Pong turned back quickly, taking up offensive positions, telling the clones exactly what he wanted them to do. The men fanned out quickly as Ahsoka grabbed her lightsabers. Krell stopped her. There'd be no need for that. Ahsoka looked to Rex with a questioning expression, but Rex was starting to lead his men into an offensive counter. As the clones ferried past her, she asked Krell what he was doing, and he told her that Jedi did not serve on the front lines of this barbaric conflict. Their efforts would be best accomplished by leading with a view of the entire battlefield, pawns and kings. He told her to watch and listen. To win this war, they needed to move pieces on a board, not thwart their efforts by dying in the trenches. The first two battles of the Umbaran campaign were grueling for the 501st, and Ahsoka was becoming irritable with Krell. The clones were hurting badly, and Pong made them keep up with an intense regiment of movement. There was very little rest for the men, and they were constantly under fire. Umbara was probably the worst place in the galaxy. They couldn't tread the forest line like they wanted to. The wilderness was filled with disgusting creatures that would eat clones for lunch. The walkways weren't safe because the guerrilla fighters of the native population knew the land much better than the clones did, so they were then of course left with one alternative: walk the firing line and be ready for counters. Ahsoka pleaded with Krell to be patient with the men and give them a chance to rest, but the only reason she wasn't bashed for stepping out of line was because she was a Jedi. Krell didn't give her the easiest of a time, not by a long shot, but he made sure she understood the chain of command. He infrequently listened to her requests, denied her suggestions, and placed her behind him, so she could watch a general at work. This really perturbed her heart. She didn't like this at all, and with an Umbaran airbase coming up, she decided that instead of forcing the men to kill themselves on a frontal assault, she'd send Fives and Hardcase on a backdoor operation, and that would result in the capture of the base. When Pong tried to pass the blame off on the treacherous clones who stepped out of line, she stood in for them, telling him that if any were to bear the punishment, it should be her. While Krell wouldn't openly punish a Jedi student that was not his Padawan, he did warn her that she better knock off this righteous behavior. They were at war, and he didn't have time to babysit a youngling. This really rustled her up, but she had to let it go, hoping that maybe he was just being difficult to work with, and this battle was stressing him out. Just a hopeful thought after all. As for the men of the 501st, they really appreciated Ahsoka's resilience. None of them blamed her for Pong's actions, because They all knew that she'd be with them on the front lines if it was up to her. It wasn't like she didn't break protocol before the Fives and Hardcase backdoor mission. She broke position and helped the clones cut down some artillery used by the Umbarans. The clones knew she was with them, but they were starting to get irritated. The thing is, the clones, they were soldiers. They had a duty to fulfill, and they would follow orders. But Ahsoka was different. She was like their sister, and what do big brothers do for their little sisters? They stand up for them. The issue is, they were dealing with a psychotic Jedi General, one who happened to outrank all of them. So dissension in the lines were brewing. But how would they go about standing up for their commander without fully facing the brutality of Krell? The worst part is, aside from Ahsoka and Rex briefly mentioning it, neither felt like they were doing enough for the other. Ahsoka felt like she could do more for the clones, but she couldn't with Krell in the way, and the collective clones felt similarly for Ahsoka. She was taking on a lot of the obscene rhetoric from Krell. Ahsoka had stepped in for Fives, Rex, Hardcase, and a couple of the other regs who so happened to piss off the commander-in-chief. With the airbase under control, Ahsoka, again, condoned a mission for the clones. They figured out how to use the Umbaran fighters. Figured out was being generous. They were basically flying wrecking machines. But Hardcase would make the ultimate sacrifice for the clone army by detonating the Separatist supply ship that was supporting the ground invasion and sitting nicely in a perfect little cocoon inside the Separatist fleet. This sacrifice would again not receive praise from Krell, which only further aggravated the clones. But Ahsoka did all she could to try and be the commander they needed during this operation. However, the real trial began when Ahsoka was finally given command over her own company for another mission. There were reports that Umbarans were stealing clone armor, so the clones went in. But the real kicker was, the information was passed to Waxer, informing him that Ahsoka Tano had broken the chain of command after a series of deadly missions, one of which endangering the lives of their men. She had broken out after killing a couple of their troopers at the airbase. She needed to be terminated. See, Pong Krell wasn't just vying for position with the Sith. He had it. Palpatine sent Krell to Umbara with one directive: get Ahsoka Tano killed. With the Jedi being in command of her execution at the hands of the clones, it would certify Anakin's betrayal of the Jedi Order and his eventual lack of care for the clone army he supposedly cared so much about. If Palpatine could prove that the Jedi and the clones weren't who Anakin thought they were, then it was proof that the only person Anakin could trust was Palpatine himself. Krell had been playing the situation loosely. He knew that by getting Skywalker's apprentice to become impatient, she'd bite the bait of a mission like this without second-guessing. She was itching for action, for a chance to join her brothers in combat, and now she would. When the skirmish between clones started, Ahsoka was targeted by longtime allies. The clones didn't want to hurt her, but with the information of her betrayal becoming the focus for the 2/12th men of Waxer's unit, they did what soldiers were supposed to do, their duty. Ahsoka had reportedly killed Captain Rex and almost killed Pong himself, until the Umbarans fled into the forest with clone bodies and armor and their commander. It was a sickening story, but believable because why would a Jedi General lie to them? The battle between the clones was one of the worst sights during the war, not even because the clones were killing each other, but because the clones were far more elite than the Umbarans. Pinning them up against each other forced their casualties to be exponentially worse. Ahsoka and Rex served side by side, fighting off the Umbaran troopers who had killed their men and their brothers. Ahsoka led the assault with Rex right behind her. Everything felt right. This was what the entire Battle of Umbara should have been. Ahsoka leading her men, until the realization of what they had done hit them. Ahsoka had to let Rex be the one to stop the fighting, because the clones were convinced Ahsoka had betrayed them. It was horrible. When they came together after a slaughter in the forest, hearts were broken. What had they done? They killed their own brothers, and that was unconscionable. How could they do that? When they found Waxer, he was dying, but he told Rex and Ahsoka that it was Krell who gave them the orders. Pong was peacefully waiting inside the command deck at the airbase, believing that the clones had killed Ahsoka. He knew that Obi-Wan would believe him over the troopers, and the survivors would come up here to betray him. Pong could set Palpatine up for the eventual rise of another plan, or simply the fall of the Jedi. There were a number of ways that this could be played politically. Example 1. The Jedi lied to their troopers, and this equals bad generals. Example 2. The clones cannot be trusted for long-term operation with the Republic. Example 3. The Jedi and the clones could and should eventually be replaced. All things for the greater empire. Regardless, Krell was thinking about how satisfying it would be to kill the clones, and then retreat into the hands of Darth Sidious. But when Ahsoka walked out the door of the elevator first, he was surprised. She survived. Ahsoka's lightsaber ignited, and she readied herself as the men of the 212th and 501st spread out across the room. She told Krell that lies, deceit, and treachery were not the Jedi way. He laughed at her, still following that old, stupid, and decrepit code. She looked at the men who tightened their hands over their blasters and told the Jedi General to surrender. He called them foolish. He was a Jedi Master. None of them, not even the likes of Skywalker's little pet, would defy him. He threw his hands out and launched the clones from their feet, as Ahsoka held on, shielding herself with her wrists and diving at Krell. She didn't know what to do. At her age, this was so convoluted, but she swung aggressively at the Jedi Master, or traitor. Krell blocked the strike with ease, igniting one of his saber pikes and shoving her backwards into the command console of the middle of the room. Okay, big mistake. Ahsoka shouldn't have gone in that easily. Ahsoka dove out of the way. She went into this fight way too lightly. She didn't know if she was going to try and kill Krell or not, but he was swinging and she was dodging, so she would fight to the death, it seemed. Ahsoka threw her hands behind her as she slid on them, applying all the pressure she could on her wrists as she avoided a strike that would have cut her in half, before she shoved up, launching herself into Pong, kicking him in the face. He slid back, igniting a second saber pike. She told Krell that she was surprised that he even carried his own weapons, always making others do his dirty work. He snarled, "When everyone is as dull as these mindless drones, it was easy." He slipped to the right and threw himself out the window. Ahsoka placed her ankle on the command table and used it to give her a boost, as she propelled herself off the tower and slammed down in front of Krell, blocking his escape. He told her that she should not have come back, but he'd take the pleasure of killing her himself, so that he could bring her head back to his master. Ahsoka found this weird. What master? Then, she stepped back lightly. Their lightsabers collided across the airbase platforms, as she used her lightness to avoid his heavy strikes. Ahsoka slipped between the blades, using her shoto to block strikes that she couldn't naturally avoid. Krell was bearing down on her, but she refused to give in. Having survived Grievous as a 14-year-old and fended off Asajj Ventress on numerous occasions, she could handle herself. Ahsoka was not about to let some fallen Jedi defeat her and escape into the hands of the Sith. She jabbed at him, which he deflected with relative ease. Clones could see their commander struggling and knew who the enemy was, as they raised their weapons and started to fire at Krell. His mastery of the blade was truly something to behold. He shoved Ahsoka into a Republic starship, clipping the back of her ribs on the vessel, as he turned around, spinning his lightsabers and blocking shots back at the clones, even pulling one of them into his range and slashing them across the chest, killing them. Ahsoka got back up and drove her lightsaber at Krell, which he defended, turning to face her head-on, as she again used her acrobatics to avoid his vicious strikes. All of Anakin's training had prepared her for the likes of an encounter with Dooku, and Krell was no Dooku. Their blades slammed together and it lit the airbase, as Rex and the other men fled the elevator at the bottom of the tower. Pong knew that he'd be surrounded soon, but he also knew that they couldn't fire on him if Ahsoka was nearby. He had no doubt that he could kill these clones. First, he needed to finish his mission, kill Ahsoka. It was all a plan to force Anakin down the dark path. Ahsoka dropped down and kicked backwards, hitting Krell in the massive chin. She spun back and deflected a strike, jabbing at one of his hands. Typically, hands were not a target for Jedi, but she knew that if she could get rid of one of these pikes, she could win this contest no problem. With the pike splitting in two, Ahsoka avoided another couple strikes from the one remaining pike that Krell used with immense strength. He placed two of his massive hands on the Jedi weapon and spun it around with a speed not seen since Ahsoka's spars with Skywalker, except her master was much faster. She could feel the tide of battle changing, and a smile wore on her face. This petulant little child was gloating. The future Sith student got pissed, driving his blade in a sort of jabs, but Ahsoka smacked them away. Her shoto was the key to everything in this fight, and he wanted to take that blade and her entire arm off. He continued slinging his weapon at her, but she narrowly avoided before striking him right in the abdomen. He didn't stop there though, as she jumped out of the way. With his skin being pierced and his life coming to a close, he started to get sloppy, and then, with Ahsoka out of the way, the clones fired on him. She raised her weapons. As he tried to strike at the clones, Ahsoka used the Force to pull his arms backwards as his chest and shoulders were filled with blaster bolts. Ahsoka's face wore nothing but disgust, as she told the beast to stay away from her men, before landing one final blow to his chest, a single strike that extinguished his life for good. While Krell's betrayal would be one of the most harrowing stories from Umbara, it was Ahsoka's determination that caught the attention of the Jedi Council. Anakin did not rush out to the system. Instead, Ahsoka was brought back home to Coruscant. Obi-Wan had secured the capital. He would deal with the Krell incident. That was far beyond Ahsoka's problem. She had served her men valiantly. On Coruscant, where Anakin heard the news, he stormed the council chambers with fury. Anakin was fully aware that the council was not the reason he was pulled from Umbara. It was Palpatine. But why should the Jedi allow someone like Krell to exist within their order? The Council knew he would come to them over this incident, especially because it involved his Padawan. And while his concerns were validated, it was clear, especially to many within the Council, that the war was changing them for the worst. Anakin demanded answers, and Yoda suggested resolutions, things to consider. Had Anakin not trained Ahsoka, she likely would have not survived. If Anakin had not left, Ahsoka would not have proved herself to be as capable as she was. A prodigy Skywalker was teaching. Rare those were to find. The men would not have trusted the Jedi as they do now, had Ahsoka not been present. Things to consider, things to look at. Another perspective is not how the Jedi had failed, but how an individual allowed the corruption of the Sith to work through them. Krell did not act alone. Yoda believed that it was the Sith who wanted Ahsoka gone. Mace looked over, catching Yoda's drift. It was a good point. The Sith wanted Anakin off Umbara, not Ahsoka. That was something that Anakin should look at. Who wanted Skywalker removed from the battle, and who wanted Ahsoka to die? All of the anger that Anakin came to the Council with dissipated, as he realized that if he wanted to be mad at someone, it had to be Palpatine. If he thought about this for a singular second, which he didn't, he would have his answer. Palpatine was the one responsible for the Republic. While he wasn't the perpetrator of the war, he wasn't exactly trying to make amends with the Separatists. It wasn't through the Jedi that Krell was blinded by hate. It was through the war, through the Sith. All of these were simply perspectives for Anakin to consider. As Anakin was thinking these through in front of their eyes, Yoda informed young Skywalker that Ahsoka was being brought back to Coruscant, and she'd be made a Jedi Knight upon her arrival. The Shroud of Darkness on Umbara could have fundamentally changed her, but Skywalker's training and her determination to find resolve had only proved how capable she was as a Jedi. A Knight she would become. When Ahsoka did arrive, Anakin embraced her and apologized profusely, but similar to her abandonment on the Trandoshan moon, it wasn't his fault. It was an accident, a challenge, one that made her a better Jedi on the other side of things. She was able to save her men and protect them from an evil being. She had plenty of time to think things through and even meditate on them before she arrived at the temple. It was wrong, and it never should have happened, but there was something deeper going on here. Jedi were being led astray by someone. Pong said something about his master wanting her dead. She told Anakin that she did want to thank him for his instruction. She giggled a little bit when she said that. All that pressure that Anakin felt on him dissipated. She wasn't mad at him, she was alright. Ahsoka bowed respectfully to her master, and he relaxed a little. They were okay, everything was alright. She did tell him that she had to tell the Council about the whole master thing, the one that Pong had mentioned. While Ahsoka wasn't aware of her coming promotion, Anakin felt a sense of jubilee for her. She would be surprised by it once she informed the Council about the entire event at Umbara. She informed the Council of what Krell had done, and then specifically named clones that stood up with her and joined her in their quest to kill off the evil Pong Krell. From Rex and Jesse to Dogma and Appo, these men had done the right thing. Also, due to Ahsoka's presence on planet, Dogma never sided with Krell, because the other Jedi didn't side with Krell. Point being, Pong Krell was serving a master, and that master wanted Ahsoka dead. She expressed her ideas for an investigation that could aid them. With this new information being revealed, the Council did not want Ahsoka to leave the temple, without a Council member or her own master. If the Sith were hunting her, then maybe they could use that information to their advantage. Clearly Krell didn't believe she would defeat him, but she did. Yoda, after the pleasantries were out of the way, wanted Ahsoka to step forward. The little green Grand Master stood up and ignited his lightsaber. Around the room, each of the counselors did the same, some raising robes over their heads. Anakin got to the door and followed suit, igniting his own lightsaber. Yoda then began telling her that by the will of the Force and by the will of the Council, he granted her the rank of Jedi Knight, and with that, her Padawan braid was removed. Ahsoka was now a full-blown Jedi Knight. Due to Depa Billaba holding a rotational spot on the Council, because of her decision to focus on the training of Caleb Dune, she suggested to her master, Mace Windu, that Anakin be given her spot as a Council member. Master Windu thought this was a fantastic idea, simply due to all the ranking being in alignment, and attempting a test with another radical Jedi. The Council had throughout the years offered Council seats to those that didn't see eye to eye with them. Dooku, Qui-Gon, and Sifo Dyas all being named members from the previous couple decades that were among those asked to join that didn't see eye to eye with the Council. Sifo Dyas was the only one of that trio to join, but they would extend an offer to Skywalker and he would accept it. This ascension wouldn't change much for him, just more meetings, but now he had access to the restricted section of the archives. Out from this placement inside the Council chambers came two separate events. The Council agreed, Anakin included, with an Ahsoka plan. If the Sith Lord wanted her dead, use her as bait and get him killed. But Sidious wasn't stupid, so despite them trying to bait Ahsoka on a number of missions, it never worked out. They never found Sidious or killed him. During these bait missions, most of which Anakin was a part of, Skywalker was undergoing his own selective change. While being on the Council and being a master granted him access to the restricted section, which he did use, there was a darkness growing. To know that the Sith Lord was targeting his apprentice, his little sister, his best friend, was angering. Fury unlike ever before released from him, and it started to grow. It never showed openly, and he never projected it onto anyone. But he became obsessed with destroying the Sith who tried to kill his little sister. Anakin's training regimens before Umbara were intense, but following Umbara, following Ahsoka's promotion, they went off the charts. When on Coruscant, he spent hours with Jocasta Nu inside the restricted section. He would take entire holocrons and bring them on campaigns. So while Jedi Knight Ahsoka Tano was remaining the commander of the 501st, Anakin was going ballistic with new powers imbued into him from the holocrons he was learning from. He did teach Ahsoka this information, but because there was so much knowledge getting passed around, Master and Apprentice were growing exponentially. However, it did become apparent to Ahsoka that her master was taking her would-be assassination a little bit too personally. It was personal, in all fairness, but he was literally losing his mind over it. The darkness he felt wasn't shown outwardly, but it was fueling his growth in the Force, turning him into a monstrous duelist, something far more powerful than he would have been at this point had Ahsoka not been threatened. Endangering Ahsoka and not finishing the job was Palpatine's greatest error. Anakin now fully trusted the Jedi Council as a member on it, and he believed he was in the position to make positive change for the Order, which he actually was. With the new knowledge he was possessing, thanks to access to the restricted section, Skywalker was mere months away from eclipsing some of the greatest Jedi warriors in the history of the Order. So much of this, though, was fueled by darkness, and the dark side only grants temporary results. Anakin knew this, and he was trying to moderate himself, but it was very difficult. Especially because Ahsoka was feeding off the knowledge he was sharing. Why stop now? The war wasn't over. When it was, they could put down the lightsabers and begin the peacetime. But for now, go ballistic. A month before Barriss Offee bombed the Jedi Temple, Anakin was getting impatient. He was stronger than ever before, and instead of waiting for his opportunity, he, in the middle of the night, while out on a campaign, left his fleet. Ahsoka, as a Jedi Knight, could command if need be. The newest member of the Jedi High Council arrived at a Separatist base in the middle of the night. With the cover of darkness, he stole a Separatist shuttle and departed for Sereno. With no answers coming and the Sith going back into silence, Anakin decided that the best way to learn who Sidious was by forcing the answers out of Dooku. Before he did that, Anakin and R2 snuck into the Count's castle on Sereno. With Magna Guard sentries watching everything, it was a very covert mission for the two of them. But under the cover of darkness, they were able to get to the control panel at Dooku's desk, where R2 would download everything he could regarding the Sith or the Separatists. What R2 found wasn't related to the Sith or Dooku, but it was related to something else. Anakin told the droid to take this information inside Dooku's Solo Sailor and take it all the way back to Coruscant. What they found was information of the entire reserve fleet. It was a dormant fleet just sitting in an untouched quadrant of the galaxy, waiting to be used and released on it. There was also some battle tactics too, showing off where General Grievous and Admiral Trench planned on attacking next. On the list were Ringo Vinda, Boss Pitti, and a few more reinforcement deployments at Felucia, Megiddo, and another attempt at holding Kata Nemodia. As R2 abandoned the castle, drawing the attention of the Magna Guards as he left, Anakin slipped into Dooku's room and barricaded the door. His lightsaber ignited, and Dooku woke up in a terror, rubbing his eyes and seeing Skywalker marching towards him. His vision was cloudy, but he pulled his lightsaber and swung forward. Anakin and Dooku collided, as Tyrannus demanded answers. Skywalker shoved Dooku backwards and told him he needed to know first. Dooku ducked and parried before asking what. Skywalker used the Force to launch Dooku into the wall and told him that he needed to know exactly where he could find Sidious and who he was. Dooku jumped out of the way as Anakin threw his lightsaber across the room. It lodged itself into the wall. Dooku charged Anakin, who slipped away from each strike, pulling the weapon from the wall and parrying Dooku. His powers hadn't doubled since the last time they met, which was like a month ago, but his powers had quadrupled. Tyrannus slipped before eating a metallic forearm to the throat, which forced him to start choking. Anakin grabbed a Magna Guard pike and jabbed it down onto Dooku's back as he wailed in pain. Anakin kicked the lightsaber out of Dooku's hands and jabbed the pike down again, telling the Count that he wouldn't ask a third time. Dooku tried to resist, but he was shocked again, thrown to the ground. Skywalker could feel anger pulsating through his body. It was now or never. Dooku told him to choke on his words, and without a second of hesitation, the electricity stopped and Dooku was lifted off the ground with the Force in a choke. Anakin threw him into the wall again, holding his hand outstretched with fury in his eyes. Anakin gave Dooku one chance to live. Dooku's legs were kicking against the wall. His body was still tingling from the electricity, and he tried to say anything. Anakin shoved his back against the wall harder before releasing his grip. He ignited his lightsaber and told Dooku to tell him now. Dooku coughed up blood before squeezing out a few words, telling Skywalker that Sidious was Chancellor Palpatine. He was the Sith Lord. He created the clone army. He started the war. He called the hit out on Ahsoka. Anakin asked Dooku to see how easy that was before jabbing the Magna Staff into Dooku's chest until he was unconscious. Why not collect 2 Sith with one mission? Anakin lugged Dooku over his shoulder and locked him inside of the shuttle as they departed for Coruscant. One at a time, the Jedi would get pressing information. Firstly, the main fleet from a sector system in the area would be dispatched to wipe out the reserve forces, while reinforcements were sent to bulk up territory where Separatists planned to be. Shortly following that, an Anakin Skywalker, fresh off an all-nighter, delivered Count Dooku to the Council, and told them to come with him. They were confused. Master Skywalker informed them that Palpatine was the Sith Lord, according to Dooku. He had confessed it. They needed to go. This was shocking information, but Dooku could be lying after all. They had to think this through. Anakin agreed with Master Mundi, suggesting that he call the counselors for a meeting. Mundi nodded. It was early in the day, but they had to do this, as Dooku was brought into the prison below the temple. Despite Anakin agreeing with Mundi that they should start a meeting, the dark side was coursing through his veins. He wasn't going to stay for a meeting. Upon his arrival at the executive building, a very unhappy and grouchy Anakin stormed into the Chancellor's office. Palpatine looked up in a surprise. Oh, how good to know that Master Skywalker was back on Coruscant. Anakin closed the doors using the Force, and his lightsaber ignited. Palpatine looked into his eyes and he could see it. Skywalker knew the truth. Dooku had caved, or maybe someone else didn't. He tried to reason with Anakin, telling him that he was simply just imagining things. Skywalker clenched his lightsaber, telling Sidious, no more gaslighting, surrender or die. Palpatine mocked him. Killing the Chancellor wouldn't be a good look for his precious order. Anakin shrugged his shoulders, lobbing his lightsaber directly for Palpatine's head. If he was a Sith, he'd react. If he was a politician, well, that would be a different story. As it moved in, Palpatine raised his hands and stopped the Jedi weapon. Proof was all Anakin needed. Now he had it. Sidious ignited the crimson lightsaber from under the desk and flung himself across the room. He didn't know how he'd talk his way out of this one, but Skywalker was now a threat, one too large to not face head-on. Sidious was incredible with his speed, and Anakin was without his lightsaber. He stepped back, twisting his shoulders and using the Force to block strikes that came too close. Sidious pulled another lightsaber from a nearby vase, and Anakin twisted around and caught the already ignited blade in his hand. Sidious looked at Anakin. This was not the same Jedi he knew. This was an unhinged acolyte, one that could be corrupted, but it was too late. This was an individual ready to risk everything to protect the ones he loved. Palpatine stepped back as the color red filled Anakin's face. His eyes melted into the crimson glow, and he drove his weapon forward. Sidious stammered, deflecting the strike before attempting to kill his would-be student. Anakin blocked as he pulled his blue lightsaber back into his hands as he was launched out of the room. Skywalker bashed into the ground and rolled to his feet, using his boots to halt his sliding. He swung upwards, colliding with Sidious in the middle of the chambers. People all watched in shock. What was happening? Anakin got to his feet and parried where he could. All of his anger wasn't working. The short-term result had done its job against Dooku, but here, against Sidious, he might not fare that same victory. Anakin smashed the crimson lightsaber into pieces within his metallic hand, before focusing on his assault with the blue one. He didn't want Sidious gaining access to another lightsaber. Clone troopers reacted to the fight as Commander Fox led his men in to stop another Jedi insurrection. Anakin was thrown back into a pillar, as Sidious directed the lightsaber slowly towards Anakin's shoulder. But the young Jedi, swiftly, used Sidious's strike to propel the blade into the pillar before elbowing Sidious in the jaw, and swinging at him with ferocious strength. Just as Sidious started to lose grip, Anakin felt a shock roll over his back. It was Commander Fox! That treacherous backstabbing suck-up! Anakin fell to his knee, using all of his strength to keep himself upright. Luckily for Anakin, Commander Fox actually used a stun round for once. As Anakin started to lose his grip on the fight, Palpatine knocked his lightsaber away and prepared to go for the final kill. Anakin threw his hands up as another couple stun rounds hit him in the back. Anakin used the Force, not the dark side but the light this time, to keep the Sith away from victory. As he was using the Force to protect himself, he could feel something else, a shift in the dynamic. He was pulling the Force essence from Palpatine, and the Dark Lord felt all of his power vanish from within him. As Anakin knocked the lightsaber away, he fell onto his hands and knees. Just as he did, the Jedi Council, his Jedi Council, came to save him. They knew what he had done once he didn't show up for the meeting, and it turned out he was right. While Anakin's actions were seen as treacherous, Dooku was able to defend him. This was not a willing defense of Skywalker. Dooku was doing it to save his own skin, which didn't even really work out for him. Dooku tried to say Palpatine mind-tricked him and Skywalker saved him. Anakin was told the great lie that Dooku had been a part of, and Anakin tried to stop the war. And while that technically wasn't true, thanks to the Council telling the galaxy that Dooku was a traitor and he folded when he lost to a worthy opponent, Dooku was also convicted. The Council considered a myriad of slap on the wrists for Anakin, but no need. He found the Separatist war machine, and it was destroyed. During the Palpatine hearings, the ones that would convict him to the death sentence, starvation in the box, General Grievous would too be destroyed. By the way, starvation in the box was a horrible torture device. It was a white box that had no view of anything, just an endless chamber of white. Inside of it, a variety of noises played. Some of them were outside of the human ear frequency, so Palpatine could feel it, but he couldn't hear it. Some of these frequencies would make him physically ill, and of course, starving to death inside of a white box with your own regurgitations is just the cherry on top. It did kind of make the Republic look more vile than the Sith, but it was a punishment only valid for the Sith Lord. In the weeks following Palpatine's and Dooku's sentencing and the death of General Grievous, the Separatists would surrender. The information given to Republic High Command by R2 was the nail in the coffin for the Confederacy. So much was learned in the aftermath, and the fact that someone as evil as Palpatine and Dooku almost destroyed the galaxy brought the people together. They realized they weren't enemies, just cogs in a system dominated by two evil men. Master Skywalker would take a slight break and go to Tython with Master Yoda to meditate and leave all that darkness behind. When he returned, he'd begin training another student. His future children, Luke, Leia, and Jin, would be planned births, and they wouldn't happen until the end of the decade. Following the trip to Tython, Master Kenobi and Skywalker would stop Maul from overthrowing Duchess Satine's leadership on Mandalore, and it would crush the support for the growing Crimson Dawn. The clones would get their happily ever afters, and no more would they be terrorized by psychotic Jedi traitors. The battle droids, too, got their happy endings, not having to be burdened with war and getting their own chance to be reprogrammed and used for non-war related activities. Skywalker's life remained positive, and Ahsoka's did too. Like the Shatterpoint lineage, the Chosen One lineage would have two very young members become present in the High Council within a short period of time. The strength of Master and Apprentice would eventually become the strength of the Jedi Order, as the era of the Sith came to its bitter end. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to all of our patrons: General Wells, Ozpin, Darth Vitiate, Seju Jagger, Root36, Hunter Belden, Rosebird, Angel Dust, Alexander Reese, The Beginning and End, Django Fett Clone, Nick5098, Ben Ingram, The Big Red Pure Mark, Diamond Constant, Darth Nemesis, Lord Tib, CC2024, Gallivan Gaming, Tristan, Mandalore, Sir William 1767, Darth Revan, Granite D. Bane, Laliant, Sky Guy, Penguin, Colin Rooney, Shark Midori, RJ38, Nick, Michael Erlinger, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewa670, Annika Snake Runner, CT7567, Toaster Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Nox, The Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tem, Johnny DeGuin, Sense Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Lord Callie, Youngling Slayer 66, Mammoth Studios, Anakin003, Lord Draken, Fortis Lakes Star Wars, Erebus, Rex the Wolf, Mammoth 3 First Names, Darkseid46, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing. For supporting the channel, smash that like button. Let's talk about this story. So, Ahsoka versus Pong Krell. I think it'd be a very contentious match. I think people could end up sleeping on Krell in this scenario because we've never seen him duel. I think Ahsoka is just a prodigy. And I think that kind of outdoes Krell in the scenario. I think the only way she really wins is the constant distraction and Krell being overconfident. I think his overconfidence is literally his weakness. It's kind of like the whole thing for the villains in Star Wars. They're all overconfident. They're like, I'm gonna get you, and then they don't because they're overconfident. It's like their whole shtick. I think that'd be what would undercut Krell. I do genuinely believe that the Council would see this as Ahsoka's greatest trial. A 16-year-old going up against the Jedi Master and stopping him so she could protect her men. I think the Jedi Council would react to that favorably. Going into this, I really wanted to have a dark side Anakin fight Palpatine. And having Anakin be in this dark side, this dark side loop going all the way up until he almost loses a fight, I feel like is super necessary, because unlike the Mustafar, he's not arrogant beyond his own comprehension. He's just super powerful, and he's got that short-term result. It's like Ezra at the beginning of Season 3 of Rebels. Like, super, super powerful, using that dark side to get things to help people out, but the short-term results doesn't result in long-term satisfaction. And so, at the end of the duel, he's like, oh, wait a second, I figured this out. I don't need to use the dark side, I can use the light, because I happen to be the chosen one. Haha. So, I hope you all enjoy the story. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.